Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for the last video in this series on my British El Alamein campaign game. This of course will be the debriefing following our third mission. Now I'm sorry to say that the third mission in terms of our objectives was a failure. We were tasked with the clearing of a specific German strongpoint which was in the path of our brigade's advance. The objective needed to be taken out because we had to clear a path for our brigade to rapidly pursue the elements of the Afrika Korps which were withdrawing. So effectively the Germans have left this force behind as a forlorn hope come speed bump, in the hope of slowing the pursuit and giving them time to disengage with a decent interval before we were able to begin pursuing them. In that they were successful. The remaining Germans, and I did draw random number checks for these outcomes, the remaining Germans surrendered once they ran out of ammunition. And they had in the process lost about a third of their squad. Two men killed, if I remember right, and a couple of others had fled, rounded up later. But all credit to them, they did their job and they did it well. Now that's a bit of a negative for us because it means that come the end of this mini campaign, which has run over the course of the historical Battle of El Alamein, these three missions that I've just played, unfortunately my squad has not succeeded in any of its missions. We technically lost all three. So that does sound like a huge negative, but I do want to inject a positive into it because I will keep these fine fellows on file. And I may well return to them again in the future to bolt a new campaign onto them following on from this one. And the positive I'm going to bring out is that in the battle that has just ended, they did not suffer the loss of a single man. In fact, not a single one of the chaps felt the need to break and run and head for the rear. And that surprised me because, if anything, I was really worried about how the squad in its present form would perform in battle because the squad which I took into the second mission, the daylight assault to seize the escarpments, was composed of men who on average had much higher morale and motivation. And it showed in a way because the squad suffered quite badly for it. We lost about a quarter to a third of the squad as casualties, and a couple were driven from the field, and our squad was broken. We had the bittersweet experience of seizing our geographical objectives, but we paid a very heavy price for it and were not able to sustain the victory. It proved very fleeting and we were driven away. So that was quite sad. But in a sense, despite the fact that we didn't achieve our objective, the squad still redeemed itself in this last action. Because as far as I'm concerned, they fought well. They gave their German opposite numbers quite a bloody nose in return for very little comeback. And yes, they didn't take the objective, but even so, I think the performance is noteworthy. So before I close the book on this one, I just want to run through the squad as it presently stands, just to see how all the different characters have fared. Now, I've already updated the campaign sheet because I didn't really want to make you all sit there while I laboriously filled everything out. But I'll start with the gallant Sergeant Vasey. He has led this squad very well from the beginning of this campaign to the end. He's proved his courage on every occasion. He's a leader from the front. And if anything sums him up, I think it's the gallant rush he made forward in the mission we've just completed towards the German pillbox, personally planted the demolition charge. And it was only great misfortune, I think, that all it did was stun one of the Germans. But, you know, he did his job and he did it to the best of his ability. And I'm very pleased to say that not only has he built up a healthy amount of survival points, but his elan ticked up to 6, which meant that I was able to increase his morale from 5 to 6. which also earns him a promotion point. So he's well on his way to moving up the scale from sergeant to a more senior sergeant. So well done, Sergeant Vasey, and long may you continue to lead the squad in future. The next man, Corporal Burns, he is a newcomer. His predecessor, Corporal Barnard, unfortunately was one of the men who died in the daylight assault. So the mission just gone, the nighttime attack on the German strongpoint, was Burns's first. He performed pretty well. He was fairly solid. He's earned himself a survival point and 2 elan points, so no complaints there. Burns is clearly settling in. Gilfallen, the Bren gunner, he is another new man. He replaced, I believe it was Scarborough, who was killed also in the daylight assault. Gilfallen did pretty well. I've no complaints about his performance. He served as part of my firepower base in the previous mission, and I think he's another one who'll settle in nicely. Private Tresham. Now, like Vasey, this man was with the squad through all 3 missions, and he came through them with a pretty good performance, I believe. He was never routed, as far as I remember. I could be wrong about that, but he may have routed on 1 mission. I only gave him a total of 4 elan points over the 3. So yes, sorry Tresham, I take it back. You must have decided you'd had enough on 1 of the missions. But otherwise, fairly steady soldier and a good man. Glad we still have him with us. Private McNamara, replacement for Hodge, who was also a fatality. So McNamara did all right, as did the rest of the squad. Nothing outstanding in his performance, but he didn't run away, despite being one of the lower morale characters. All of the low morale men impressed me in the battle we've just had. They proved a very steady bunch, and yes, a couple of them did hit the dirt once or twice under fire, but I won't hold being pinned against anybody. This gentleman is not truly Private Bell, because the original Private Bell did die fairly early on in the campaign. In fact, I think he was the only fatality we had in Mission 1. But I had to bring him in under the campaign replacement rules, because after the terrible second day, I didn't have enough rifle-equipped men to fill the gaps, which is why Private Bell is still only on a KIA rating of 7. This very new Bell hasn't earned enough survival or points in order to boost himself. Next, we have Private Cleary. Private Cleary, despite the fact that he is a rather shaky individual, is one who surprised me by being with the squad throughout. So he's survived every encounter. And what's even more impressive is he never broke and ran in any of the scenarios. And that, I'm glad to say, gave him a well-deserved 6 elan points by the end of the campaign, which has boosted his morale up to 2. So he's finding his feet and becoming braver. The poor man was very much the squad coward at the start. That's a very cruel thing to say, but no doubt he got a bit of ribbing in the mess. But he is finding his feet and becoming a more respected member of the squad. He's certainly amassed a good amount of experience. Another one who did well is Private Cottrell, but a bit unsteady, this one, because he did retreat during one of the missions. Again, memory escapes me as to which one it was, but the clue is in the fact that he's only got the 4 elan points after 3 missions. So glad we've still got him. He's a decent enough soldier, and he's another one who, of course, has been with the squad from the beginning, and that kind of experience and cohesion is always welcome. Private Whitesell has been with us for 2 missions. He was the replacement for the original Private Bell, the fatality of Mission 1. Private Weitzel has acquitted himself very well. He was a key element in the daylight assault, and he was one of those still well up for it, even as our squad was retreating during that horrible daylight attack. He was the escort for Sergeant Vasey during the man's very perilous run-up to the German strongpoint in the mission I've just completed. And he did his best to keep his sergeant safe while Vasey planted the demo charge, and they both stayed right up next to that German position until the end of the scenario. So a good, dependable man, very good fellow to have in a fight. I'm glad he's still with us, and I wish him every success. And lastly, Private Moon. Another surprise, this one, because as you can see, he is not one of the steadiest men in the ranks. But Private Moon, I'm glad to say, has been a solid soldier from the very first mission. He has not, he's not broken. He has had occasional problems with his rifle, but then he's not the only one. Desert conditions, I'll let the men off. Most significantly, he earned enough Elan points for me to bring his panic total up. So he is another surprise in the ranks, a soldier who didn't seem too steady at the beginning, but is finding his feet and getting to grips with this whole business of soldiering and getting on with it. So there is my squad. I am glad, again, that there were no casualties in the last mission, because I think even though the boys have had a very rough time in this campaign, the experiences they've been through and the lessons they have learned will stand them in good stead for future missions in the desert. Who knows? We might even invade Italy one day. You never know. So as I say, I will keep them on file because they're a fine body of men. As for the campaign victory, it is a loss for me, unfortunately. Had we won the last scenario, it would have reversed the victory point situation and we could hold our heads a bit higher. But I think the performance has been creditable. The missions all were difficult in different ways. And in the last mission, there is an argument for saying that we were badly equipped for the job in hand. Funnily enough, I did a random draw for what we would be equipped with, and had I been luckier with the draw, we would have had a flamethrower attached to the squad, which probably would have been more suitable for clearing that strong point. As it was, we got a low number, which meant that we had to make do with the demo charge, and as far as I'm concerned, Sergeant Vasey did everything right with that thing. The fact that it didn't do more damage to the occupants of the strongpoint was not his fault. So although we end with a final campaign victory score of -4, I don't think there's anything to be too ashamed of there. And the important thing in terms of the grand strategy is the Africa Corps is on the run. Our US allies have landed on the other side of North Africa, and we're going to catch them between us in a pincer movement. I have a good feeling about this one. Kasserine. Sorry, bad throat. Anyway, I'm going to leave this campaign there. It's been really fun dipping into Upfront again, but there's as ever, I've had some really lovely messages from folks of all stripes who've been tuning into this channel. So over the next couple of videos, I'm going to be having to turn my attention to some other games, but it's always a pleasure to step back into Upfront. I've had tremendous fun, and most of all, I want to thank all of you who followed this particular campaign, and indeed all my videos on this channel from start to finish. Your company is always a pleasure. I'm never going to grow tired of telling you all that. I really appreciate the fact that you tune in and watch this. And it's almost as good as having a gang of friends around the table, watching the story unfold. And Upfront tells some cracking stories. So thank you to all of you. As always, my regulars, I really, really appreciate having you fellows along for this. It makes all the difference. And always, I welcome comments, thoughts, suggestions, queries. It's so nice to have that dialogue, and it's so great to be able to share so much good stuff over this excellent game. And not to forget any newcomers. Um, if you're here for the first time and this just so happens to be my first video and you're scratching your head thinking, what the heck is this upfront business all about? Well, you're more than welcome. Please do have a look at all the other upfront videos I've done if you like, or if you're already a Grognard veteran, then just, dib in and take whatever you like out of the series. And if it's wargaming in general you're after, please do have a look at some of my other videos. I hope you like some of the other things I've showcased on the channel. But just to end off by saying a huge thank you again for whatever's brought you here. I really appreciate you tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you all on my next video, whatever that's going to be. It's still a work in progress, but that's me signing off from the Western Desert for the moment. Thank you all again. Take care. Bye.